For this project, I'm using an old 8.5 by 16.5 inch frame that I picked up at a garage sale. I take the backing off, I take the glass out, I clean up the glass, then I take Elmer's glue and put it around the perimeter of the back of the frame where the glass would sit. I replace the glass and take Elmer's glue one more time and put it around the perimeter. This serves two purposes. It helps to hold the glass in place and it helps to prevent resin leaks when you put resin on the other side. Once the resin dries, it permanently adheres the glass to the frame. The next day, when the glue is dried, I take painter's tape and I put it around the perimeter of the back of the frame as an extra precaution against resin leaks. Next, I'm cutting up the glass for the flowers, and the glass that you need to make the lilies are bud vases, or a very small diameter glass like what I'm showing you here. These are the exact same petals that I cut up for the iris that I made last week. And so this is what you need. You need to nip around the perimeter of a narrow bud vase. One side will be pointy, the other side you need to make rounded. It's a fatter side and you need to round it off. If when you cut it you end up with a longer piece with two pointy ends, you just have to cut it in half and make a rounded edge on one end. And so I'm just going to show you slowly 3 petals that I make, and I end up cutting up a whole bunch of these, and I had actually cut them up prior to this when I made the petals for the iris that I made last week, like I said. So again, you just cut around the perimeter of a small diameter vase, like a bud vase. One end you leave pointy, the other end you use your nippers to round off. These are the C-bell nippers, and that teal ring that you see by the round cutting blades is actually holds on to the piece of glass so that the glass doesn't fly. So you have to still wear eye protection though, because little shards can fall off of it. It just doesn't throw the glass like a regular nippers does. And so here I go with my third piece of glass, and I'm just, the one end is pointy and the other end I'm just nipping around it to make it round. So the petal is pointy at one end and round at the other. And these are very curved pieces of glass, as you can see. And that's what you want for these petals. So this is the lily that I'm going to be making this week. And see how curved that is? And then this is how they turn out. Next, I throw them in my VEVOR tumbler. This is the one I keep inside and don't use any grit with. I just use it for water to take the sharp edges off the glass. This was actually the glass I used for my iris. Put water over the top, just covering the glass, and then a squirt of Dawn dishwashing liquid. And all the Dawn dishwashing liquid does is it removes any oils or dirt that you may have missed when you cleaned the glass. Next, I set it on top of the base for the VEVOR tumbler. This one has 2 knobs on it. One is the number of days. It goes from 1 to 10 days, and the other is the speed, which can go from 1 to 4. And we're going to run it at 4, and we're only running it for an hour, so you actually have to set your own timer and shut it off yourself. So I find that the thicker glass only takes an hour. The thinner glass can take up to 2 hours to take the sharp edges off. And it does all the work for you. It's so simple. And then when it's done, I rinse it off and I set it out to a towel to dry. And then it's no longer sharp. It's such a simple thing to do, and the look of the glass does not change at all. Next, I take all the glass out to the garage and spray it with some Krylon Sea Glass spray paint, but I'm really not happy with the color. I feel like it's too light of a color, so I take the TAMIYA translucent pink spray paint and respray all of it after the other has dried. Then once this pink has dried, I take each piece and I take this, I don't know what kind of a paintbrush this is, but I take this paintbrush, some white paint, and I paint all the way around the edges of each piece. And then after that's dry, I take my crushed glass from Michael's, the Michael's crushed glass. It's called Ashland Decorative Filler. And I take some clear Elmer's glue and I put it in this little cup here, and I paint that on top of the dried white paint. And then while that's still wet, while the glue's still wet, I take the Ashland decorative filler and I sprinkle it on top, and it sticks to the glue. And you could also do this with UV resin, put the UV resin on and then sprinkle the glass on like I did with my last flower, the iris. I don't know why I decided to do it this way. You could do it either way, but I ended up just doing it with glue. And because we're going to pour resin over all of it anyway when we set up the flower, so I thought, oh, I'll just use the glue now. But anyway, so I covered all of the flowers in this way. Next, I start creating the flowers, and this part I'll go through kind of slow so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm taking the UV resin, and I'm using, I guess this time I put a little blob of it down, and I don't have the petals touching each other. I kind of have them separated a little bit, and I hold them up, put the UV light on it, count for about 30 seconds. After 30 seconds, you should be able to let go of it and just leave the light on for another 30 seconds or so. And then once that's set, and again, we're going to keep on putting the light on it so it will continue to cure. We just want it so that it's standing up before we add the next petal. And then for the next petal, I do the exact same thing. I take some UV resin and put it down, and then I put the petal on top of it. Now you notice these petals we're doing opposite from the iris petal. With the iris we had the pointy part in, but with the lilies we have the rounded part of the petal in and the pointy part out. So once you have all three of those standing up on their own, then we're going to add the top petals. And these are actually going to be kind of suspended up. So we're putting the UV resin on the two pieces, setting it in between it, and again, you have to hold it up for about 30 seconds, and after about 30 seconds you should be able to let go and just leave the UV light on it, and it will stand up balanced on its own, just like that. And then I continue to work my way around the flower, putting a little UV resin on the edge of each side there, again holding it up so that it's not touching the mat and it's kind of balancing, and again count for about 30 seconds. After about 30 seconds you should be able to let go and leave the light on it for another 30 seconds or so. And be sure to move your UV resin away. You don't want it to harden. It won't harden in the container. It could just harden the tip of it so that you have to poke a hole through it to get the UV resin out again. That's why it's in a dark container, so that it doesn't set. So, and then here's the sixth petal. There's 3 on the bottom, 3 on the top. This is the final petal. Put a little bit of UV resin on each side, and again balance the petal there, hold the UV light on it for about 30 seconds and then remove it. And then what I did was I just took a little more UV resin and put it where each of the petals meet, and put the UV light on it one last time just to make sure it would all hold together. And then, isn't that pretty? I think it turned out so pretty. It's not done yet though. I thought the back was a tiny bit sticky, so I went ahead and I turned it over and I put the UV light on it again for another minute or so. So as you can see, the second flower turned out just as pretty as the first, and now I want to put stamen in the center because the lilies have these stamen that stick way out. And I picked up these packages, one on Temu and the other one I got on Amazon, and you can get them in all different colors. Of course, I didn't have them in the color I wanted. I wanted to do the stamen on these lilies in black and in hot pink. And so I had to take it apart and then just hand paint with a little regular acrylic craft paint the very tips of them. Again, the black and the hot pink. And I just draped them over the plastic cup and let them dry for a little while before I was ready to use them. While those are drying, I cut out some stained glass that I want for the stems and for the leaves. And I am not an expert stained glass cutter. I did learn to cut simple shapes by watching YouTube videos, and it's really not that hard to do. There are hundreds of free videos. So I just cut up some stems so that I had some choices, cut up some leaves, and then took them outside to the garage where I have a grinder, and I went over all the edges. I do all the edges, then flip it over and do the other side too. Stained glass, when you cut it, is so sharp and it's so easy to slice yourself. That's why it's really important. The resin does not necessarily cover it, so you really have to get the sharp edges off. And if you don't have a grinder, you can just use like a sanding block or something like that. And then I take it in, I wash it, and I set it out to dry. So next I'm going to prepare the stamen to put in the center of the flower. And they're very flimsy. The string on it is very, very flimsy, and I need the string to be stiff so that it will stand up. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put UV resin on them, straighten them out, and then put the light on it so that they will cure straight and they'll be firm enough to be able to stand up. So I'm going to go through this kind of fast because I have quite a few of them. So I put the UV resin on, straighten it out, and again, you have to hold it for about 30 seconds. And then after 30 seconds, they should be able to stay under the light on their own without you holding them straight. And it worked. It really was pretty easy. So just put the UV resin on it, hold it straight for 30 seconds, and then let go and, let them finish curing. And I just left all of them on there. That way they could continue to cure as I prepared the next one. And like I said, it was pretty easy to do. And now the string that was between the two ends was nice and stiff so that they would stand up straight. So now all the stamen are ready to go. I put 4 of them together. I fold them in half. I take my pink UV resin. You could use clear UV resin or whatever you want. And I stick them in there and I put the light on them, and voila. Doesn't that turn out pretty? Oh, I think that is so cool. And then the second one, I do the exact same thing. I take 4 of them, fold them in half, put UV resin in the center, stick the stamen in. You may need to hold it up for about 30 seconds. And look at that. I think they turned out so cool. And it really wasn't hard to do at all. And look at how nice and arched the petals are because we used the small diameter bud vase. So here I am just putting it all together. And there's a little bud I painted the same pink color, but it's not as arched as the other petals on the flowers. So when I first start putting this together, I put it together with this glass that I had cut off of a vase. And I just feel like the color is too light and it doesn't really match the stem, and that it's going to get lost under the resin. So I do end up removing them later. Now this glass here is reflective silver glass that also is green, but it has a silver side to it. And I picked this up on Amazon. It did come in a bag. I do save my celestial glass containers and I put it in that. And sometimes when you order the 1/4 inch, there's ones that are bigger. Just take your nippers and nip them in half. It's real easy to do if you want them smaller. I usually keep the larger pieces for other things, but in this case I wanted them smaller. So I put this glass at the bottom. I bought this last year for Christmas trees, and it is absolutely beautiful for Christmas trees. Next I get out my pink beads, and in addition to the glass that I put at the bottom, I just start putting a bunch of little pink beads and whatnots on top of the green. And then I also have some silver beads, and I go through those and put a bunch of little silver beads on top also. Just trying to add a little more color to it, because really the only colors in it are pink, green, and silver. Anyway, I thought that was real pretty. There's some little silver flowers and whatnot that I add to the bottom also. So next I start taking up all that green glass and I replace it with this stained glass that you had seen me cut a few minutes ago. So next I have to figure out what to do with the bud, and I decide to add a little bit of the Ashland decorative filler onto the bud, just like the flowers have it around the outside. I was just going to put it on the very top. And then I want to figure out how to attach that piece of green glass to the bottom of it to make it look like it's coming out of, I don't know, a leaf or whatever. And so I attach the green part to the stem, and then I have to nip the very end of the glass so that it can sit level with the green glass. And I go ahead and I attach that with some UV resin. And didn't that turn out cool? And now you don't have to worry about balancing the glass. It's all connected together, one piece, so you can just lay it down and not have to worry about it. So I just finished straightening out the glass. The resin I'm using for this project is Let's Resin resin. It's a 1-to-1 ratio resin that you mix slowly in a cup for 3 minutes, scraping the sides and scraping the bottom. I always drizzle it over the glass first. I am putting it under some of the larger stained glass leaves. Sometimes I can get bubbles under there. The glass that's at the bottom, it's in your best interest to just drizzle it. You don't want to pour it over it because it can lose its sparkly qualities. The other glass, I do make sure it's totally covered because I like it to be nice and shiny. Some people just drizzle it over that too, but I like it totally covered. And after I'm done and I know all the glass is covered, then I go up and around the sides. I use my spoon or usually whatever I've stirred the resin with to mix it, to push it around. I know they say it's self-leveling, but you really have to push it up into the corners and along the edges. I use my kitchen torch to get rid of the bubbles. I use my toothpick to straighten out the glass. I use a wet wipe to wipe around the edges of the frame. And once I'm done with the project, I always come back every 15 minutes to check for glass placement. It's really important that you have it on a level surface so that the glass doesn't move. I also check every 15 minutes for bubbles and retorch if necessary. And I also use a toothpick to pull sediment out if there's any sediment in it. And like I said, I come back every 15 minutes. This resin cures best at temperatures between 75 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit. You need to read the directions for the resin that you're using because every resin is different. It's in your best interest to cover it with a dust cover when you're done. So the next day I removed the tape from the back, and now this resin isn't totally cured after 12 hours, but you can touch it. It's cured enough that you can touch it and move it around a little bit. And so I removed the tape from the back, and I look at it and I'm just not happy. So I decide I want 2 more pieces of glass or leaves down toward the bottom. So what I do is I take the 2 pieces of glass that I want and I totally cover them with the UV resin so that it looks like they were covered with the regular resin at the same time that I totally resined the project. So I just go ahead and put that over it. I put the UV light on it and let it set for a minute. I place them on the project where I think I want them, and I take some more UV resin and put it at the points where it's going to be touching the glass underneath. And because UV resin cannot penetrate anything that's opaque, you can't put the UV light on top, you have to put it underneath. So that's what I do. I go ahead and I set the UV light underneath it and set the glass on top. and it looks just like it was put there when I resined the project initially. Hey everyone, another flower done. Hope you're not getting tired of my flowers. So anyway, this one is the opposite of how I did the iris last week, because with the iris, all the points were facing in. With this, it's the round parts out, and I think they turned out so cool. So I didn't video the part where I added more glass all around here, the same Ashland decorative filler that's on the actual flowers, and I added more in here. I just think it just makes it so nice and sparkly. And then I showed you how to add glass after the fact, and then after I shut the camera off, I added 2 more leaves. I just felt like it needed something more. Now, if you're not using UV resin and you want to add more glass and you want to pour over it, you have to fill in all the areas that are flat, or else you're going to see where the resin starts and stops. You can't just pour over the added piece of glass, because the resin will pool around it, and you'll see, like I said, where it starts and stops. So UV resin is a perfect solution to adding additional glass where you want it after. It's like, oh geez, it just needed something more, and so that was the best solution. And you cannot tell, that glass is just as shiny. It looks like the resin was poured at the same time. You really don't know the difference. So anyway, I think it turned out pretty. So the stamen, I got the yellow ones I got on Temu, and the purple and yellow ones I got on Amazon. So you can purchase them in both places, and they do come in many colors. You can color them. It was real simple. You saw how I did it. They are flimsy. You do need to stiffen up the stalks on them, or the string on them, to make them stand up, and I just think it looks so cool. The petals look so cool, and the look at how the petals stand up, and the stamen in the middle is higher. How cool that looks. And if you hadn't used the UV resin to stiffen them, they would just be kind of flopping over. But look at those petals. I think that looks so cool. And some of them are just suspended. They're not touching the glass at all. Now, I guess if you're not wanting to use UV resin at all for the project, it could be done. It would be really hard to balance it. You could probably glue them together. Some people use hot glue. That's what I did initially, like 3 years ago, when I did some roses that I've showed you, some giant roses I used hot glue for them. But underneath you can tell. But so you could use hot glue, maybe some glue, and to stiffen these up, if you're not wanting to use the UV resin, you could also use probably some kind of a glue, but you'd have to set something on each side to keep it straight for hours of drying. The UV resin is so easy once you get used to it. Some people are kind of scared of it, but it really is easy to use. So I'm trying to think what else I can tell you. So yeah, and again, this I put together with the UV resin, because to balance those 3 pieces on top of each other, it really, I think, would have been impossible. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. That really helps the channel. If you enjoyed the channel, go ahead and subscribe. Ring the bell. It'll notify you whenever I put out a new video, and I try to upload a video every Friday. We have the Facebook page going, an amazing group of people displaying beautiful artwork. Everybody is so helpful. There are all different kinds of artists on there. Some people do a lot with molds. One lady from a YouTube channel, Awesome Incidentals, Loretta, she does a lot of things with molds. She does flowers with molds, and instead of she does glass too, but sometimes she'll have like a mold, flower mold, and those look beautiful too. She's real good with the molds. Anyway, and then we have mosaic artists on there too. So, you know, different perspectives on glass art. So no question is too silly. A lot of beginners. I'm learning a lot on the channel myself, which I thought I had set up to help you guys, and then, well, I'm learning a lot too. So anyway, I hope you guys come join us there, and I hope you all have a great day. Thanks for watching.